Hey everyone, Jules here for WhatCulture.com, and I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, hey Jules, that's a nice inflammatory title you've got there. Really going to go down well with that Dark Souls crowd, that. Well, you know what? Thanks to Activision sending Scott and I down to London to play Sekiro for a closed-doors session, I have had hours of time with this title, and I know I've had enough time to know that there are simply some areas of this title that are more refined than that of its great-grandfather. So put down your Zweihanders and let's fat roll over to the land of the rising fun, as I'm Jules, this is WhatCulture.com, and these are 8 ways that Sekiro Shadows Die Twice is better than Dark Souls. Oh, and shout out to the comments of this guy should just get good or some other type of Blighttown level banter. Just remember, I'm not slagging off Dark Souls or Bloodborne, I'm just saying improvements can and have been made, and that while this game is not Dark Souls, it still maintains a lot of the development style and clear similarities which make this comparison apt, so stick that up your Lord vessel. Anyway, off we go. Number 8, streamlining combat. If there's one thing that this title is going to teach you, it's that Sekiro punishes those who wait. If you do, you're likely to either get overwhelmed by mobs of enemies or simply not have the poise to guard against some of the big swings that are going to be coming your way. Therefore, it is all about positioning yourself correctly. Now, while this is true of other games in FromSoft's family tree, a lot of emphasis in previous titles was about waiting for your chance to strike, a lot of shields up and turtle poking, if you know what I mean, to just get the enemy to react. But in Sekiro, it's all about making your own opportunities. This is accomplished through the sheer amount of combat options you have at your disposal. If an enemy is guarding a lot in an effort to waste time until his mates show up, then break that guard with a charged attack or heavy swing from your axe. If a musketeer is taking pot shots at you, then break from combat with the hook hand and eliminate him from the mix. In Sekiro, battles feel like you're constantly moving forward and smashing the spinning plates over enemies' heads. And this is made all the more simple and satisfying thanks to the considerable work that's gone into the game's combat system. Guarding and parrying are now on the same button, which makes it much more viable to deflect attacks even when your back is against the wall. And the sometimes iffy parry window from previous titles is gone, and it's so clear when you can and can't negate a strike. There's no stamina meter, meaning that you can break from combat quickly or continually dodge and jump out of sticky situations, and instead, it's all about poise, represented by a bar that fills up when you hit enemies and take hits yourself while blocking. If it fills and breaks, then you're either going to get an insta-kill opportunity for you, or you're going to be in for a world of hurt. It's clearly displayed above enemies and on screen, meaning that you always know how tantalizingly close you are to opening up enemies' throats and doesn't obstruct the flow of combat. Now, being able to have such clear identifiers isn't something that's shown so much in previous Soulsborne games, so it's actually refreshing and much more accessible as a result. Another small factor that ends up making a huge difference is that all the prosthetic arm effects share the same air quotes ammo, meaning that you don't need to balance multiple items and instead you can just focus on maintaining one resource pool. It's a great touch which streamlines the whole affair and allows for implementation of new tactics on the fly. Lovely stuff. Number 7, freedom of movement. One of the most immediate things you'll notice when booting up this game, apart from, hey, that is a very sweet arm that you've got there, is that you now have a jump button. Now, I know you had a jump mechanic in Dark Souls and Bloodborne, but it was, well, let's just say a rather clunky affair. Here, the players can jump freely over obstacles, enemies, and even jump kick off walls in order to access new areas. This is a huge departure from previous From Software titles, and the range of options this opens up is immense. If an enemy is battering you, you now have the option to just dodge vertically and escape. If you want to get the drop on a group of foes, then you can now leap across buildings and position yourself with ease. You can even use your hookshot hand to grab certain enemies from afar, closing the gap and even knocking them off balance, meaning that battles gain yet another level of player investment and a greater degree of control thanks to this mobility. Number 6, checkpointing. One of the more frustrating things about Dark Souls, besides those goddamn asshole blow dart snipers, was the immense slog that faced players of the franchise between bonfire and boss upon death. One of the quintessential gaming desires is that one more go experience, and while I respect the decision to tease that expectation out to teeth-shattering levels, Sekiro is much more fair when it comes to its checkpointing. Instead of dying and looking at a punishing 15-minute journey back to the boss, Sekiro posts spawn points more frequently throughout the map, making progress and success feel like a more constant event. This, in turn, is great at keeping player investment high, as it's less likely you'll walk away from an encounter if you can just get back to that moment of challenge in faster fashion. In my eyes, it's not a weakness to have a more frequent point of respite, because the combat between these moments is still chaotically fast and visceral, and the ability to jump back into fighting bosses and actually growing in skill as a result meant that my time literally flew by. Number 5, storytelling is way clearer. Now, this might be seen as either a massive positive or a negative, but regardless of your feelings on the matter, Dark Souls and Bloodborne tell a lot of their world lore through item descriptions and obtuse dialogue. Now, personally, I love this, but I know a fair few people that felt completely overwhelmed and therefore disconnected from the game as a result. Therefore, knowing that Sekiro is much more direct with its story will be something of a consolation. From the outset, you're given a clear direction from your lord, who asks Sekiro to protect him and swear loyalty. From the first few missions, you're told that our protagonist has no recollection of the events that led to him becoming a disgraced warrior, which sets up the gameplay mechanic of traveling through his memories to unlock new information, and the death of a central figure drives the desire to seek revenge. Now, some fans might see this as a more shallow affair than the Soulsborne games, but there is a more direct, immediate, and ultimately personal tale on show, which still carries with it a sense of weight and melodrama that Miyazaki is famous for. Number 4, character progression. Well, to put it bluntly, there is some. Now, I'm not saying that Dark Souls and its sickly ilk are devoid of that. I mean, far from it, with Fashion Souls becoming one of the more popular expressions of creativity in that game. However, when it comes down to the moves, you have the same set of physical moves that you do at the beginning of the game as you do at the end. Now, Sekiro introduces skill trees and development. In a clear effort to ease some of those criticisms pointed at the lack of weapon choices, Sekiro allows the players to not only level up their strength, but also invest in skills that will customize how they play. You can create a flurry of whirlwind strikes to push back groups of enemies, you can slide around them to get quick back attacks, and you can even learn to deflect mid-air against enemies that look to pluck you out of the sky with arrows. From the start of my time with the game to the end, I felt like I developed both as a player and that my lone wolf had also grown as well. It even couples with the narrative threads of the game in that it makes sense for Sekiro to unlock these skills as he begins to regain his memories and shake off all that dust that he's been accumulating. Number 3, enemy variation. Whoa, even I have to stop myself here. I mean, Jules, man, what you on about? The Dark Souls enemies are incredibly varied. Well, other Jules in my head, who I'm now speaking to here and also represents the comment section, maybe if you'd let me explain, I'd be able to detail that I don't mean in terms of design. I mean that in the first 5 hours of gameplay in Sekiro, you experience so many bosses, sub-bosses, and regular enemies that nearly every new section felt like it was introducing something exciting and fresh. Even the low-level grunts have a menagerie of styles. Some have pots and pans which they bang to alert others. Some have bows, muskets, spears, shields, axes. Some are armored. Some just throw rocks if you try to escape. And these are just the basic enemies. What this means is that all the combat feels like a constant juggling act and rewards quick thinking and enemy prioritization. Then we have the named sub-boss style enemies, which are sometimes so challenging that it's a real sense of achievement just gained from beating them. In my playtime, I found shogun generals with two-handed swords, spear-wielding shinobi hunters, massive drunkards with curved blades, and because of the balancing and constant introduction of fresh faces to slaughter, it managed to keep the game feeling exciting even if I died multiple times. Which is a great way to address what some might term souls fatigue, you know, that feeling that you get when you just have to slog all the way through and you think to yourself, gosh, it's the same enemy over and over again, isn't it? Talking about you, Silver Knights, you suck. Number 2, stealth. There was an almost audible outcry of excitement from our office when we saw that stealth sections were being announced as a major part of Sekiro, and that's for good reason, because lest we not forget that From Software has its origins in the Tenchu series, and those games are f***ing great. The implementation of stealth is not just another throwaway combat option either, as the game teaches you early on through the use of a giant albino snake that being unseen is an almost essential tactic in order to thin out the enemy ranks. By taking the time to sneak past enemies, you open up opportunities that wouldn't be possible otherwise. For example, you might be able to sneak behind a group in order to take out a sentry or some ranged foes, or you might be able to get the drop on a particularly difficult sub-boss and take a whole pip of their health off. When you consider that these named characters can drop you like a bad habit, this becomes an essential arrow in your already bursting quiver. And number 1, the sense of empowerment. Finally, we have to talk about the point that actually sums up everything I've been talking about previously. As you can tell, I think Sekiro is a phenomenal game, and it all boils down to one point. I feel that this title nails the balance between player vulnerability and empowerment. To achieve this, the developers have made sure that the player is fed certain easy victories in order to pump them up, and then offers up play walls in the form of named characters that test all they've learned up to that point. And they've cleverly thought out which skills test to posit where. For example, you'll come across an ogre who you're told is deathly afraid of fire, and when you battle it, you realize that it ain't gonna be an easy fight. He maniacally kicks and grabs and drop kicks you all over the place. Yet if you heed the message you heard and travel to another area, you'll find the flame prosthetic, making this fight a little bit easier. What's happening in this one example is that the player is broken down to the point of defeat, but if they pay attention to the information, can find an item which will help with this fight, thus restoring the sense of worth and achievement they get from defeating the ogre. I say this, though, from a point of view of a clever player, because I ended up defeating the ogre without the flame arm, and let's just say, if I had hair, I would have pulled it the bloody hell out. The Soulsborne series has always rewarded fighting smart, and Sekiro uses that to encourage players to explore new areas, develop as a character, and make the most of every item you get. This mentality, coupled with the speed of the combat, the mobility of your character, and the sheer range of options available to you, means that Sekiro pulls off something truly outstanding. It gives you hope. Hope that you'll be able to destroy these beasts, which is something almost counterpoint to the ideology of Dark Souls, in which hope is all but abandoned. And there we go, I just did this as a little joke and another reason to express my adoration from this upcoming title. Hope you enjoyed it. Let me know what you thought about it down in the comments section below. And you can go follow me at RetroJ over on Twitter. The review for the game will be coming out as soon as it drops, and I cannot wait. So until then, speak to you soon.